So the 4th of July is American Independence Day, but it was also my Independence Day in 2018, and it was also the day I met the Queen for lunch. This is the ticket that she sent me, inviting me to Holyrood Palace to join her garden party. But the story doesn't start there. We need to look back to when I was 9 years of age to consider the journey that I had made. The Troubles in Belfast meant I was part of a Catholic family living in a very Protestant area during the height of the 1970s Troubles. As was common at those times, families in the wrong neighbourhoods were, I will use the word, encouraged to leave, and nothing was more encouraging than having the house across the road burned down with the note to say, we were next. So my father packed a tea chest with a few personal belongings, and as a family, we started again. This traumatic experience meant that I had a new beginning in a new market town, leaving behind the normality and few friends that I had made. However, at this stage, I was finishing primary school and preparing to move to a single-sex grammar school. It was really then that I realized the horror that was in my mind. I was feeling I was in the wrong place. I was not supposed to be at an all-boys school. Surrounded by boys was not the place I was meant to be, and trying to fit in was mentally exhausting, and that involves the mind part of tonight's theme, Body, Mind, Spirit. To set the context, this was the early 1980s. When I reached 15 years old, it was still illegal in Northern Ireland to be in a same-sex sexual intercourse relationship. And this was only decriminalised in 1982. That's 39 years ago. I didn't know if I was gay. I didn't even know what trans was in those days. But I did know that something just wasn't right. So when I was at school, did I want to designate as trans or even gay? For me, it just was not possible in those days. So what did I do? I hid. It wasn't until I was 38, that was in 2005, that the right to change gender was introduced. And I knew I had strong feelings as to why I had not fitted in all those years earlier. But I thought at 38, it was far too late for me to do anything. And I was going to be stuck in my mind in the wrong place in life. And so I just persevered, telling no one how I felt. Fast forward a few years, and by 45, I wasn't coping. My mind was cracking up. I was really depressed. I felt that I didn't fit in anywhere, and to compound things, my body was in turmoil. I was overweight. Some things haven't changed during lockdown. And I was probably at risk of a stroke or heart attack. So by 45, my body was the issue, suffering because of what was going on in my mind. By that time, in 2012, I even went so far as to think about how could I end this? My coping mechanism before this period was simple. Get up at 5 a.m., go to work, stay there until 8 or 9, then take the hour's drive home. And as I was so exhausted, I would just go to bed. This repeated every day of the week, as without the ability to focus on work and other things, the real issues in my mind had the risk of coming to the fore, and I wasn't ready to deal with those. My eating habits were ridiculous, and my body was really starting to suffer, and I had to do something. I made the decision to come out and tell those closest to me what was going on in my mind, in an attempt to sort out my body, as my mind couldn't be sorted without the other. But that coming out is another story. After coming out, it took a lot of years of counselling and starting hormones in 2017 before normal service resumed, and I started to live my life as it always should have been. As for my transition background, this is well documented in the Channel 4 documentary, The Making of Me, which followed me for 2 years as I came to terms with finding who I was, and more importantly, telling other people who I really was. The researcher from the TV crew met me at my first event that I attended in Manchester, as I was too afraid to be myself here in Northern Ireland. That was my first UK outing, where I plucked up the courage to take the new me out for the first time in the middle of when I was trying to come to terms with who I was. Little did I know that several ladies that I met that weekend would become my best friends, and at least one of them's here tonight. Channel 4 then filmed my progress and transition through visits to the doctor, my first haircut, my first speech therapy session, and then my first visit to the endocrinology department at the city hospital. Hamish was very accommodating as my doctor, and I went in with the view that I was going to have a battle to take the hormones so necessary to allow my body to come to the place that it was always meant to be. I needn't have worried, as I left that day with a bag of medication to start my body on the road to recovery. At this part of the journey, the real life living had commenced, but there was a lot of transphobia and lack of acceptance from others. The snide, ridiculing remarks, the poking of fun at the new person that I'd become. But I was myself, and I didn't care anymore what people thought. I was free and able to be myself. With the spirit knocked out of me, I'd started my journey in secret, telling only a handful of my closest new friends. At this stage, I'd reached the pinnacle of my career. I was chair of my professional institution, director in a multinational engineering consultancy, and had a charity or board meeting to attend virtually every night to keep my mind occupied. I had to assess which people would accept me for who I was and to make some really difficult decisions. I resigned from my job. I lost my home, my family, and quite a few people who I thought were my friends. At this stage in my life, I remember telling someone who was considering their own journey, take a look around at all the people in your lives. Then imagine 95% of those people are no longer there. Sadly, that is the experience that many trans people still get. With the clothes on my back, I left everything I had and started again, in a similar way as to how my mother and father had done with me and my siblings in the 1970s. The big difference now was the spirit. This time, I was in a very much happier life scenario. I felt like I could actually live my real life as it always should have been. Maybe it was because I was in my 40s and no longer cared about what people thought about me. I just wanted to be free. The release of the pressure can only be described as having the world's troubles lifted off your shoulders and allowing you to live your life to the fullest. After spending quite a few months away from all the organizations that I'd stepped away from, I started to get the odd phone call asking me to get involved in different things again. Each time, I had to explain the journey that I'd taken and to set out who I'd become. One of those organizations actually nominated me to meet Her Majesty. And just the day after getting released from an operation in hospital, I couldn't miss the invite from Elizabeth. And despite being more than a little bit fragile, I caught the 6:30 a.m. flight to meet her on the 4th of July, my Independence Day. A great poem by Robert Frost sums up my journey. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. The new road was initially not as welcoming as the old road, with its twisty, winding path that I had to follow. But today, it has opened up into a far better place for my body, mind, and spirit. Thank you.
Oh, Karen, thank you very much. Now, I met you at a couple of previous Working with Pride events, and I think you told me you would never do a 10x9 story.
I think I did, but I think I was also sitting on the committee with Annette, and I think I stuck my head up and said, wouldn't the 10x9 be a really good event for this month? So guess who got roped into speaking?
Well, that's what always happens. But sure, did you enjoy it?
Paul, it was an amazing first experience, and now I have to think about what other stories I can tell.
Oh, I'd say you're full of them. I would say there's no problem with that.